as it represents in a very succinct way what faces us as European Union, given the fact that over the last 7 years we have gone from one crisis to another. We had the financial, the economic crisis, the Eurozone crisis, last summer Greece, then the refugee crisis, the rising threat of terrorism, especially strongly demonstrated with the attacks in Paris, but also elsewhere. And at the same time, we face these challenges, but we also have, as a Commission, a set of 10 priorities in our agenda for jobs, growth, fairness, and democratic change. So how is the work program matching all this? We have decided on 23 components in the work program. As we have done last year, we have exercised discipline to align what we work on with the priorities of the Commission and with the demands we hear from our citizens. Not surprisingly, on top of our work program is the European Agenda on Migration. Already last year we have taken steps to establish hotspots in Greece and Italy for relocation and return. We are experiencing the shock of arrival of almost 1.5 million people. I don't know any place on the world, on this planet, that would not experience a shock with that kind of massive arrival, but obviously we have to build the components of our agenda for migration and exercise them. For this year, the most important proposal is the European Border and Coastal Guard, which we count very much on your support to get done. It would allow us to strengthen our response, including in terms of common asylum system and in terms of returns. We also work on the European Agenda on Security. There is a proposal on European Defence Action Plan among the 23. Jobs, growth and investment, of course, are at top of the agenda, because when our economy is strong, the European Union is strong. We have put in place the European Fund for Strategic Investments. Already in 6 months of existence last year, it has delivered a boost of 50 billion euros for the European economy, and we would continue with it. We are also preparing a new skills agenda. Very critical for the success in this area is digital and energy market strategies to broaden and deepen what has been traditionally the strength of our union in competitiveness terms, our internal market. There are a series of initiatives for this year. First package on security of gas supplies this month, and having invested considerable efforts in the climate talks that have succeeded in Paris, we have a lot of work to do to implement what has been agreed. We are working on giving a boost to the single market, especially to help our SMEs and startups by addressing regulatory obstacles and facilitating access to finance. There are a series of initiatives set out in our single market strategy of last October and an action plan on VAT planned for March. We also want to make progress towards fair, efficient and growth-friendly corporate taxation based on the principle that companies should pay taxes in the country where profits are generated. And an anti-tax avoidance package was adopted on the 27th of January. We are following up on the 5 Presidents' report towards a more resilient and prosperous economic and monetary union, including completing the banking union, building a capital market union to finance the real economy, reinforcing the multilateral surveillance of our economies, and developing a European pillar of social rights. We had an orientation debate in the College on the 27th of January on the social pillar. And during the Dutch presidency, we expect a lot of progress in this area. Sustainability is driven externally and internally, externally by the agreement in the United Nations on the Sustainable Development Goals and by the Paris Agreement, and internally by the Action Plan on Circular Economy of last December to create a single market for the reuse of materials and resources, to move away from a linear economy. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the 16 chambers of national parliaments who participated in the joint opinion on food waste in July last year. Last but not least, the external challenges. We are working with our international partners to address the conflicts in Syria, Libya, Ukraine. We have renewed our European neighborhood policy aimed at supporting stability and democracy in our southern and eastern neighborhood. And we are now contributing to a new global strategy on foreign and security policy. Just this last week, there was a very important meeting on Syria, where the Commission and our member states have provided sound response to what has been the most dramatic conflict of recent times, generating the largest number of refugees, and we feel the flares of this conflict here in Europe. All of these challenges require us to work together. And we are pleased to see a number of proposals identified in Annex 3 of the two-hour work program for 2016 to be prioritized in legislative process, now agreed. EURES, the European Job Mobility Network, Network and Information Security, Data Protection, EU Passenger Name Records, Europol. A process for prioritization of key legislative files is now foreseen in the new interinstitutional agreement on better lawmaking, and I want to recognize my colleague Frans Timmermans for all he does for better regulation. We have put on the table a proposal for interinstitutional agreement on mandatory transparency register later this year. Now let me use the remaining 3 minutes to say something about two of the elements of the program that are in my area of responsibility, the multi-annual financial framework revision later this year, and the determined action we are taking on budget focused on results. The MFF revision could not come at a better time because being hit by the refugee crisis, we have made extremely good use of the flexibility that has been granted, and I want to thank the members of the European Parliament here present for the role of the European Parliament for us to have this flexibility. But very clearly we live in times when we have to make our budget even more agile, and the question is how we can use the forthcoming revision to do so, recognizing that any revision has to be done with unanimity in the Council, and recognizing that in these difficult times, protecting the unity of the Union is as important, if not more important, than money. So we will have to work hard to make sure that we deliver a capacity to meet the challenges ahead of us during what is going to be very sensitive discussions, but also discussions that can help us to build on the achievements we have had in the last year. For example, multiple objectives for the same money, how we can get more for the buck of our citizens. And that takes me to my second point, budget focus on results. It is about stretching every euro to the maximum and being accountable to our citizens. What we look at is increasing the leveraging impact of the budget, improve the indicators on which we report in terms of performance, simplify delivery so we can get our citizens at ease to tap into the resources of the budget, and of course, improve transparency. We have put out an app that you can download on your phone and see where money goes. Finally, own resources. Big chunk of our discussion in the so-called Monti Group is dedicated to it, how to perhaps shift more to genuine own resources as we go forward. And at 0, I would thank you very much for your attention. Look, 0 seconds left for me. Look very much forward to your questions, and I'm very grateful for the chance to be with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President. As we have a not too long list of speakers, you can still request the floor, while I hand the floor now to Mr. Koenders. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Commissioner, chairs of the committees on European affairs, distinguished parliamentary colleagues. I'd like to welcome COSAC back to our country for the first time since its foundation during the 12th Netherlands presidency of the European Union Council. When your conference first met here 25 years ago, the list of participants fit on only 2 sheets of paper, and the outgoing Luxembourg presidency had just submitted a consolidated outline for a treaty for the European Union. The meeting's agenda covered the implications of a political and economic union for the legislative powers and the capacity of national parliaments to exercise effective democratic control over community decisions. In 1997, the then Dutch Foreign Minister Hans van Mierlo presented the state of negotiations just before the final IGC on the new treaty that took place in Amsterdam. And your conference underlined the importance of transparency in order to bring the European Union closer to its citizens. And in 2004, your conference laid the basis for the mutual coordination of national subsidiarity checks, the yellow card system. All this goes to show that your debates are often ahead of their time, and I hope that remains the case. We'll see when we have to answer all your questions, but joking aside, your foresight showed your immeasurable value. Each of the conferences I've mentioned has laid the groundwork for important milestones in terms of democratic legitimacy, accountability, and your own role as national parliaments in conjunction with the European Parliament. Not a debate in this House goes by when I'm not asked to reflect on these topics in some shape or form. Ladies and gentlemen, before I reflect further on these issues, let me say a few words about our presidency. The Dutch EU presidency is navigating turbulent waters. Globalization, digitization may have brought the world closer together, but given today's many political conflicts, I can also understand those who feel it is close to falling apart. The dreadful attacks in Paris and the instability at our borders have struck at the very heart of Europe. And the migration crisis seems to be tearing away the fabric of European Union cooperation. And let's be honest, in recent months we've glimpsed the prospect, however remote, of the European Union succumbing to political regression or even fragmentation. But let me say this, it is a fiction that one would gain effectiveness and ability to reach one's political goals on these very severe crises by giving up the shared sovereignty we have right now. The decisions expected by our populations on the key challenges of terror, of migration, the economic prospects of our children are key. Gaining room for maneuver sounds appealing, but it's meaningless when it yields no results. Without a seat at the table where decisions are made, one becomes dependent and is forced to become a follower. In order to have a maximum say on how our future is shaped, we have to be ready to compromise. Today, the European Union is undergoing a series of stress tests, I would call them. Although I can't predict the state of our union at the end of our presidency, I promise you all that we'll do our very best to leave it in a better shape than we have found it. Today, we are all faced with a question. What kind of union do we want to be? What kind of union do we want to leave to our children? The Dutch presidency will have to address some urgent and immediate issues, but we will work hard not to let short-term crises eclipse longer-term priorities. During the euro crisis, many of us did what was necessary, but sometimes it seems we've forgotten about the pain and the cost. Europe is built not only on the Brussels institutions, but also and above all on its citizens. And they are becoming increasingly unconvinced of our ability to tackle the problems we face today. This is the paradox of our time. Just as the globalized nature of our problem demands practical and, where necessary, European and multilateral solutions, people are turning to the nation state as a source of protection and civic pride. Understandable. Without fail, Euroscepticism is resulting in electoral gains in the Netherlands and abroad. And in my country, there is little support at present for much deeper and further integration. Now, the migration crisis is jeopardizing our common goals and values, and particularly the integrity and achievements of the Schengen system. As a result, public support for European cooperation is waning. So it's now more essential than ever to show unity in our approach. An appeal for solidarity from member states under pressure should be answered with firm solidarity by all. We are faced with an overwhelming influx of migrants, border security failures, and the failure of the Dublin system. There is a lack of sense of urgency when it comes to implementing the agreements we've made on registration and identification and on fair distribution. The crisis is affecting the relations between member states. It has an impact on solidarity in all its forms and on the functioning of Schengen itself. Unilateral measures will only further undermine unity and create additional tensions. In other words, Europe also on this issue needs to get its mojo back. This union relies on the support of its citizens. We need to regain their confidence, the confidence that we can measure up to the challenges of our time and deliver. That starts with focusing on the essentials. In our presidency, we will therefore limit ourselves to 4 main issues that lie at the heart of Europe's current challenges. I mentioned already migration and international security. And this will dominate our agenda for sure. Our policy can be summed up in 3 words: implementation, implementation, implementation. We are working relentlessly with Turkey and our partners on the Balkans to find practical solutions to manage the flow of asylum seekers in an orderly and humane way and keep the benefits of our Schengen zone. The informal meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs in Amsterdam this weekend has been another step in the difficult process of tackling the migration crisis. During a presidency seminar in Strasbourg last week, we have examined how migration and the rule of Europe within Europe interact. Our union is also a union of values, and we must act accordingly. Second, the single market. The Vice President of the Commission mentioned it. As job creator and innovator, we want our children to have jobs. Many people think that the single market is somehow complete. We all know that it's not true. We will continue the vital work of promoting a deeper and fairer single market. This means making the digital market more transparent and make sure that consumers can buy products and services on the internet throughout Europe without national limitations. A fairer internal market means equal pay for equal work all across the Union. Implementation is key during our presidency on this point. Third, sound European finances and a robust Eurozone. Maintaining financial and economic stability requires our ongoing attention. We must press ahead with the reforms for modern economies and healthy budgets. Another key to public confidence is effective governance in all member states. That is the foundation of a strong European monetary union. And that's why I keep pressing the point that European discussions need to focus on better governance. We need to discuss and address weaknesses in this area. We must understand that Brussels can't solve all our problems. A strong union needs strong member states. We also aim to use our presidency to start an open and inclusive debate on a new and reformed multi-annual financial framework. I was very glad Commissioner Georgieva just spoke about that. In the high-level meeting the week before last in Amsterdam, where some of you were present, we've managed to stir up the debate and get the stream of creative and out-of-the-box ideas flowing. And let's keep this spirit alive in terms of more flexibility, more attention for political priorities. Force a forward-looking policy on climate and energy. We will move forward with the implementation of the 2030 climate and energy package, mainly through the discussion on the ETS revision, and we'll continue working to strengthen the other pillars of energy union as well. After COP21, now it's up to translation. And last but not least, and I will make a few comments in closure on this, we need to fix the bond between our citizens and the EU institutions. Now, that's complex. I'm not going to push forward all kinds of solutions to this. But in the light of the challenge and tensions I've described, and the priorities, and not building a Christmas tree, and focusing on implementation and priorities, it's crucial to focus on making connections. Connections between the member states and the institutions. Connections between the European Union and the European people. Many are critical of the European Union, but many also realize that no European country can face today's challenges alone. In Europe, we are stronger together, and ultimately there are more that unites us than divides us. That goes far beyond our trade, our environment, our climate, our energy, and not least our peace, security, and prosperity. So if we want a union that connects, and we can't even think about tackling this challenge without you, because the key role here is for parliaments, for national parliaments, closer relations between parliaments themselves, and more dialogue between national parliaments and the European Parliament and Commission. When I speak to national parliamentarians, they sometimes say the European Parliament isn't interested in us. I don't believe that's true, nor do I believe that it's a competition. Together you represent 500 million Europeans. Together you can shape a true demos, connecting with citizens, not only consumers, and fulfilling your democratic task of ensuring checks and balances. The EU envisaged by its founding fathers has evolved greatly, and the challenges today are very different to those immediately after 45. We're well beyond Monnet version 1.0. We're trying to build Monnet version 3.0, and it's not easy. We have to balance the need for effectiveness and democratic legitimacy. And we have to balance the wish of the people to do things at national level where possible with the need to tackle problems at a European level when they demand a common approach. Together we must find that balance, not by dreaming, but by working hard and working together. The treaties are quite clear. There are two pillars of democratic legitimacy in our union. First is the EU pillar, the European Parliament, which is directly elected in EU elections. And second is the national pillar, the Council and the Member States' parliaments elected in national elections. And whereas the EP has been given a much stronger role in recent decades, developing it into a fully fledged parliament with legislative and control powers, the role of national parliaments in EU decision-making has not evolved in the same way. We believe there is room for improvement here. We believe that their role should be expanded in several ways. First, via a stronger direct role in the EU decision-making process itself. That is through the enhanced use of yellow and orange cards and the structured dialogue with the Commission, sending written input to the Commission or inviting the Commission to visit national parliaments, and they do that a lot. Secondly, but also via a stronger indirect role in EU decision-making, that is by involving parliaments more in the national process of determining a member state's position in the Council. Third, and lastly, via an enhanced interparliamentary cooperation, not only among yourselves in the frameworks of COSAC, but also in the context of the Article 13 conference. These are powerful forums for collaboration, which is why I'm delighted to be here among you today. We believe national parliaments are the bridge to the national electorates. It's your voice that needs to be heard at national and EU level. So we encourage you to take forward the work you're doing on all these points, and where appropriate, we will work to further strengthen your role. In that regard, of course, we study and follow with considerable interest the proposals published as part of the new settlement for the United Kingdom. The issues at stake are not just important to the United Kingdom, but should make for a better deal for all of us. The red card option for a majority of 55% of national parliaments will certainly add an extra dimension to the role of national parliaments in the European decision-making process. Ultimately, this is only one part of the equation. I've already said that we need broad public support for the choices we make. One of the key questions we need to answer is how to restore public confidence in our ability at both the national and European levels of the European Union to solve today's problems practically. As far as EU decision-making is concerned, it's up to the institutions to answer this question, the Council, the Commission, the European Parliament. I won't speak for the European Parliament or the Commission today, but as Council presidency holder, I'd like to talk about the role of the Council and why it can increase public confidence and connect with citizens. A key word in this respect is transparency, a traditional pillar of Dutch EU policy. The EU will remain opaque and inaccessible if we fail to open the windows and give the public a good look inside. That means not only giving people tools to locate information swiftly, but also helping them understand the information they find. I believe that by increasing transparency, we can also help national parliaments fulfill their role and thus improve public confidence in EU policy making. This is why our presidency has put transparency on the top of the agenda of the General Affairs Council. Increasing transparency will help national parliaments control their respective governments. We will press for a register of delegated acts and a dedicated database on the state of play in different legislative dossiers. What's more, on the 1st of June 2016, we will be hosting Transparency Camp Europe. This event will bring together the diverse fields of open data and IT, journalism, academia, politics, government and startups with one simple aim: to improve European transparency through the use of open data. Public and thus transparent procedures will help national parliaments exert influence on EU decision-making. We want the Council to practice what it preaches and set the right example. The agreements on transparency set out in the interinstitutional agreement on better lawmaking will therefore be our first focus point. Arrangements regarding trilogues, for example, and the agreement regarding the mutual exchange of views and information between the Council and the Parliament during the legislative process. I very much hope that the IIA will be signed into law by the three institutions soon, so that we can start implementing it. I would like to thank you very much for coming today to this building in The Hague. I hope you make progress on the work you're doing. We're looking forward to close cooperation with you, with the European Parliament and with the European institutions during our presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Koenders. I would like to thank both speakers for their presentations. It is now time to move to the floor, and I still see that we have almost 45 minutes left for this debate. I will gather multiple questions. I don't know if the list is already in the screen, but I see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 17 speakers listed, and I will remind you that I have set speaking time for 1 minute. I will give you all the floor, and after these 17 speakers, I will give the floor to Ms. Georgieva and then to Mr. Koenders, and if time allows, we might take a second round. Let me now first give the floor to Madame Danielle Auroi, because I know that you pressed first, but then you probably pressed again, and then you came later in the list, but I know that you will have to leave soon, so I'll give the floor to you first.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to take the floor first. Unfortunately, I do have responsibilities back home, so I will have to leave you soon. Thank you very much for your presentations. On behalf of the National Assembly, I would like to say that I welcome the priorities presented by the Dutch presidency, and I wish you every success in your endeavors. I believe that the great experience of the Netherlands in European affairs will provide great benefit to the European Union when we are facing so many challenges. In particular, I would support the priorities set on migration. We do need more solidarity in our own countries and amongst member states and vis-à-vis the world abroad. Refugees are not a threat. This is a moral imperative. It's a question of rule of law, and it can provide economic opportunities, even though we need to share the burdens. How will the presidency be able to work to counter the decisions on relocalization? And I would like to refer as well to COP21. At this time, I believe we must be concerned about energy efficiency and reform of the carbon markets and indeed the energy union. I could add a lot more, but I'll just say thank you very much for your excellent management of the presidency.
Thank you very much, Madame. Thank you very much. As you have noticed, 1 minute is short. After exactly 1 minute, you hear a short bell. That is a little reminder, and then about 15 seconds later, I will cut the next speaker off. So thank you so much for keeping almost within the time limits. The next speaker on the list is José Ignacio Sanchez from Spain.
Okay, thank you, colleagues.
Colegas, yo visité.
Colleagues, last week I was at the border between Serbia and Macedonia as the person responsible for borders in the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE. We did not see a wave of refugees, but a flood of refugees. Some 500,000 people came last year, and last Thursday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, with low temperatures, we saw that this 1,500 people had crossed the border that day. Serbia is doing a huge amount of work for all of Europe. It is the first port of entry where the biometric register of refugees is produced. There is an agreement with Croatia for the safe transfer of these people throughout the country. They are given a document which allows them to stay 72 hours in the country. But the Serbian authorities are telling us that in the spring, the flow of 2,000 people per day may go up to 4,000 or 6,000, and there's a domino effect. The restrictive policies in Northern Europe may make the situation worse for people waiting on the borders. So this is a crisis that we need to tackle at its origins, but also along the road that refugees take. We have to work with Turkey. We mustn't threaten Greece, and we must help Serbia. This is a crisis whose scale is going to test all of our values. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Rikard Hurcik.
Thank you, therefore, Mr. Chairman. I would like to focus on just one very sensitive issue, the migration. The previous decision on relocation are, frankly saying, rather not implemented and cannot hinder secondary migration. No, the first and I think the most important common aim should be to regain the control of EU's external borders. So the border management package of the last December is to be considered as a right step forward. As border control belongs to member states' competence, any action of the further European border guard should be complementary to national measures. The effective external border control is the prerequisite for the internal free movement of our citizens, notably preserve the integrity of the Schengen area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Lord Boswell.
First of all, I'd like to say how much I'm in favour of the Commission's slimmed-down work programme and the very businesslike tone set by the Dutch presidency. We welcome that. I particularly welcome the way that speakers from the platform today have referred to working with the national parliaments, the idea of some red card mechanism which could frustrate unwanted legislation, and also the very positive reference to our ideas on green cards for promoting good practice in Europe. President Juncker's work plan promises further steps to ensure that national parliaments have a strong voice in European decision-making. I wonder what work is going on and whether the Commissioner can offer us some perspective on the future of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker on the list is Anna Bukal.
Thank you very much. We believe that the Presidency's priorities are consistent with the risk and a high level of terrorist threat against Europe, and we fully support them. We welcome the Presidency effort aimed to strengthen the fight against radicalization and recruitment for terrorist purposes. And from that point of view, when it comes to the migration flow, it is important to implement the legislative package launched by the European Commission in December 2015 and the one on the smart borders. And from that point of view, we are satisfied to see that the control of the EU external borders are becoming now a priority. For us, a challenge, and we welcome the inclusion of the cybersecurity topic by your presidency, and we fully support the Dutch approach and actions to implement the EU cybersecurity strategy. Likewise, we are welcoming the proposal of the directive on combating terrorists, and we are fully supporting the energy union and particularly enhancing the energy security. From that point of view, the right of each member state to set its own energy mix should be preserved. And one last thought, for us it's important to maintain, and we are pledging to you to maintain on the European agenda the developing and discussions about the Eastern Partnership. And one question, don't the presidency believe that before talking about new permanent mechanisms, we should make the ones that we already agree workable? Thank you.
Thank you. I remind you all to try to keep within the minute. Thank you so much for the floor. I know that the list has altered a little bit because I accidentally pushed the next on the list away, and the floor is now to Mr. Dişli from Turkey.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks to Dutch hospitality. I would like to talk also on the migration crisis, which should be considered in two folds. One, existing migration crisis, and an upcoming one. Due to the Russians' continuous bombing of civilians from the air and attacks of Iranians-backed Hezbollah from the lands, new refugees are coming to our borders, which we are expecting about up to 1 million. Sources are very limited, but things need to be done are piling up. So sooner or later, the crisis will further hurt Europe in two folds, further refugees and further terrorist attacks. So Geneva has to be successful. What will Dutch government will do about it? And Russians need to be stopped. And my third question, what will Holland do about enlargement process? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also for respecting the time limit. The next speaker on the list is Monsieur Bizet from France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to emphasize the Schengen Frontier Agreement and the very Schengen idea when you're talking about migration. I'm delighted to see that there's creation of new coast guards and border guides. If we fail in this task, then it will be one of the cornerstones of the European Union which will be at stake. And the consequences of this will include approximately 2% downturn in economic growth at the very moment that we are trying to put the finishing touches to international trade agreements. That would be a very bad message to send out. And the second message it would send out would be the decrease in security for our citizens in Europe. That's not something we want to do to our fellow citizens. We must do everything we can to keep Schengen in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Monsieur Bizet. The next speaker on the list is Sir Cash from the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much indeed. Why are we having a referendum in the United Kingdom? The answer lies in the lack of trust in the democratic deficit at the heart of the matter. The fundamental EU architecture of the treaties sadly cannot provide the closeness to the voters, which is actually something that you dwell on in your introductions. The citizens currently are running a deficit of -60 in trust in the European Union. It's about democratic freedom of choice, who governs us and how, who really runs the EU through the Eurozone. And we believe in general elections, and that's where we believe ultimately things like borders, majority voting and the rest of it run into such difficulties. So ultimately, you cannot achieve closeness to the citizen through the current architecture of the treaties. This is a very, very serious problem.
Thank you very much. Exactly in time. The next speaker is Mr. Kirchbaum from Germany.
Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And my thanks also to the Vice President and Foreign Minister for very clear words. But in response to Bill Cash, I'd just like to say something. Bill Cash, my friend, what are we doing in order to strengthen confidence in Europe? We also have a responsibility to shoulder. We are members of Parliament. It's up to us as members of national parliaments to explain Europe better. to the public. So we have got a real task to accomplish. We mustn't talk Europe down. No, we particularly need Europe when we are looking for the right solutions to international problems. For example, the migrant crisis, for example, international terrorism, and there's many other examples. Here we need to have an equitable burden distribution, and we need participation by every member state.
On the list is Mr. Jacquet.
Thank you very much, Chair. The refugee and migration crisis has reached unimaginable proportions. Slovenia has put a lot of effort in finding a solution. I would like to draw attention to the initiative of the Slovenian Prime Minister, Mr. Cerar, from January, in which he called for additional assistance to Macedonia in strengthening controls at its border with Greece. Stopping irregular migration at this border would have two key effects. Firstly, we could avoid closing the borders inside the Schengen area, which means that the Schengen Agreement would no longer be under threat. Secondly, there would no longer be a need for stricter border controls in the Western Balkans, a region that remains vulnerable to regional conflicts. To make the execution of this plan possible, European states are to assist Macedonia by providing police personnel, technical equipment, and financial aid. At the same time, I'd like to underline that Greece must be assisted by other EU members in order to successfully contribute its share to solving the current situation and fully implement the agreed measures. At the end, let me emphasize that Slovenia and our PM remain strongly committed to solving this crisis.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Valcarcel.
Gracias.
Thank you. Without any ado, since we have such limited time, I would like to ask the Dutch presidency a question. Minister, when will we have a true European asylum and refugee policy? We have been trying to look at this for decades, and it's surprising that at this stage the Commission has not already received the urgently needed mandate from the European Council to present as quickly as possible a draft European common policy on asylum and refugees. And it would have to include the protection of our external borders, the selection of applicants, and a single scheme of personal rights and social benefits, displacement within the Schengen area, and treaties of return with countries of origin. If the absence of such a common policy is leading us to improvise with the various legislative packages, which only take up partial aspects of a very complex subject, and this means that the European public is becoming more and more exasperated, and we have a humanitarian deficit because of the failure to act with solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Ms. Bastos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since 2008, the European Union are living several crises. A heavy economic and financial crisis which affected mainly many countries, mainly Ireland, Greece, and my country, Portugal. Now we have the refugee crisis and the threat of terrorism. But social crisis that affects some member states in particular remains for frustration of our citizens. How the European Commission program contributes to tackle social issues, namely through financial solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Ms. Huitveld.
I'm so grateful for the invitation. Norway is here as a special guest, a role I wouldn't recommend for the Brits. However, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to take the floor. One source of instability in the Middle East is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Norway has a balanced approach on this conflict since the Oslo Agreement. Yes, you find violence and extremism on both sides. However, the strongest part is continuing building settlements on occupied territory. Violation on international law shouldn't be accepted neither in Russia nor in Israel. So my question is, how can we avoid ending up with a double standard, one for Russia and another one for Israel?
Thank you very much for your questions and also exactly being in time. The next speaker on the list is Ms. Chikane. You have to press the button again, request, exactly, and now I'll give you the floor, and then it's yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I can only subscribe to the statement of the previous speaker from Norway that I do hope so too, that the United Kingdom does not join the status that Norway now has in its relations with the European Union. But when it comes to the questions to the speakers, to Madame Georgieva and to Mr. Kunders, I have two sets of questions. First of all, about European Border and Coastal Guard. As you heard from many parliamentarians, we are looking up on this initiative with a great hope, and I would like to hear your comments on how you are proposing to go forward. And the second one is about visa liberalization that was commendably suggested by the European Commission for Georgia and Ukraine. Here too, it's very important for stabilization of our neighborhoods, and I would like to hear both of your opinions of how we move forward with this initiative too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the sequence of speakers, Ms. Bregu and Ms. Katovic have requested to swap their places. So I will now give the floor to Ms. Bregu first.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I would like to wish you first and foremost the very good luck during your difficult presidency, a time in which current uncertainties on the EU prevail over the others that our countries from the Balkan area face as well. I would like this COSAC meeting to take note and support on the last proposal that came from the COSAP meeting, which is the small COSAC meeting, of the countries of Western Balkans, where we all together agreed to send a proposal to the Secretariat of the Berlin process, this time happening in Paris summit, to involve the parliaments within the Berlin process. As you very well know, civil society and governments are the only two parallel forums happening and meeting, seeing each other during and sharing their ideas in the Berlin process. So we think that the role of the parliaments and being part of that will further enhance the oversight role of parliaments and contribute to strengthen the political stability in our area as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Senic.
Dear colleagues, as you know, in December last year, Serbia has opened the first chapters of the negotiations of the European Union membership, that is chapters 32 and 35 concerning the financial control and other issues. At the moment, we are ready for opening the subsequent 8 prepared chapters. We are looking forward to opening of the next chapters during Dutch presidency, which would be chapters 23 and 24, which relate to the rule of law. So, I urge for larger support to the reforms in the Western Balkans. This is of vital importance for the European Union itself, since the clear perspective of the European Union membership is a key factor of stability in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Madame Katovic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Montenegro, welcome to Dutch presidency priorities. The EU membership is the most important strategic goal of Montenegro. For this reason, both the Parliament and the government of Montenegro are committed to conducting this process with quality and dedication. In 2014, we adopted laws. 2015 was the year establishing institution. 2016 will the crucial to implement the adopted legal framework law, provide a credible record and deliver tangible results. Only with the well-implemented reforms we will be satisfied, and the EU membership will come as a reward for job well done. In this process, we appreciate the support from the European institution and the member state. Be it political, financial, technical support, we are very grateful, always prepared to learn and achieve more. And hope that the parliamentary cooperation will continue to be faithful. In the process, EU negotiation, Montenegro has made excellent progress. From the start of negotiation, we close to negotiation chapter. We will pen in negotiation 20 more chapters. Montenegro believes in achieving full potential of region through to good neighborhood relations, regional cooperation. Therefore, continue actively to participate in all region initiatives such as Berlin process and support initiative for establishing permanent council introduced at last.
Thank you very much. Sorry, it was a little bit too long. The next speaker is Mr. Arta Adade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister. I listened to you with attention and I made 2 points. You said you will leave a better European Union than you found, and you also said that short-term crises should not eclipse the long-term objectives. The countries from the Western Balkans have made great contributions to the security issues. We are part of your common challenges. Do you think that it will be a better union if we advance a little bit in our European agenda? Thank you very much. During your presidency.
Thank you so much. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Yüksel.
Thank you, Chairman. The refugee crisis is, of course, an important issue for the presidency. Last week, we had the Hungarian ambassador in our Committee for European Affairs in the Belgian Parliament. He spoke about the refugee crisis for the Visegrad Group, Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovak Republic. Unfortunately, we heard a lot of anti-refugee voices from these countries. And the whole question is about the allocation of the refugees in the member states of the European Union. A fair allocation is needed, and therefore we have solidarity in Europe. From my point of view and for my country, you are a member of the club or you are not, and solidarity goes in both directions. And my question for the Minister, for Minister Koenders is, how can we ensure that the European solidarity can be achieved in this matter? And what is your plan as a presidency to meet this objective? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yüksel. The next speaker on the list is Ms. Ginetti.
Thank you. I'd like to emphasize that for Italy, migration and security are our high priorities. We are here to ask the Commission to play its role as guarantor of the treaties. You must fully implement Articles 77 and 78 of the Lisbon Treaty. They established a common migration policy and common policy on return and asylum. This is in concomitance with the Dublin Accord, but we know that these have not been working properly. We know it's very difficult for you to get the hot spots up and running. Security is not an alternative to reception. These are two sides of the same coin and must be confronted. We must continue with this Schengen system in order to guarantee continuity of the area of free circulation of people. But at the same time, we need to come to grips with border controls, external border controls, and say that we have one European border with a European Coast Guard and European Border Police. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Dominik Tarczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to express our support for the European Commission, for your analysis, for the challenges, and for the work plan for 2016. I'd like to underline the situation in Poland, the situation about the borders. This is the border of the biggest part of the external border. So the question is if there would be any practical support for Poland as this part of the border is the biggest one. And also I'd like to mention the thing which was told by Mr. Youssef, about the club. Yes, we are the members of the European club. We are the members of the European Union. There is no anti-immigrant talks in Poland. There is a talks about security of our people. We are responsible for our country and our border, as I said, as the biggest one. We would like to have the answer. Who is the immigrant and who is the refugee? There's a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker on our list is Ms. Kourakis from Greece.
Dear colleagues, as all know, xenophobia has reached high levels in Europe, and as a consequence, some governments are in the process of taking negative measures against the refugees. Also, in some countries, there is an official discussion against Greece, which is trying to handle this burden alone. Those points of view are dangerous, and I would like to remind all my colleagues that the European Union is primarily a union of solidarity, in which humanitarian values and human rights have always and everywhere been respected. While eager to work with the European institutions on the capacity buildings of our country as far as the management of the immigration flows is concerned, this can only be done in the framework of the institutional law. According to this law, the pushback is illegal. We need to understand that. Finally, so the solidarity has to work also on the financial level. Capacity building and financial support are the two elements which Greece needs for an efficient management of the immigration phenomenon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kourakis. From the discussion so far, we can learn that a lot of national parliaments stress the utmost importance of migration and border control, Schengen, refugee policy, asylum, etc. But there were also other important topics raised. So I would like to give the floor now first to Mrs. Georgieva and second to Mr. Koenders for a reaction to all the questions raised. Please, Ms. Georgieva, you have the floor and you have 7.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I will start with a question that is directed to how we work with national parliaments, since this is a meeting where national parliaments are represented. There are three elements in this work, what the Commission is doing. One, we have established the yellow card. We respect the yellow card. Secondly, we welcome very much developments on the use of green card. As I mentioned in my introductory comments, the first green card was issued by it came from the UK House of Lords, co-signed by 15 chambers on food waste and the circular economy package. And I hope that in the Commission reply it became clear that we take this very seriously and that the views of the national parliaments are welcome. They are contributing to better policy making. And then comes a proposal, suggestion that President Tusk made on the red card idea, something that has been discussed among parliaments, that in short is about the Council stopping discussions of a proposal or amending the proposal when a substantial number of national parliaments express subsidiarity concerns, and in some discussions it goes beyond subsidiarity concerns. We are very much interested to provide, as always we do, advice and facilitate the discussion that President Tusk is now leading in the context of a new settlement for the UK within the European Union. And that includes indeed this suggestion that the Council should commit to discontinue discussions on a legislative draft or amend this draft when a substantial number of parliaments put ideas forward, and that is within that they have expressed subsidiarity concerns, within a 12 weeks period. Why 12 and not 8? Because the 8 weeks are determined in the treaty for the yellow card, whereas for the red card there is no treaty parameter, therefore it is up to the Council to come to an agreement. And obviously we would all be watching with interest the discussions in February on that matter in the Council. I was also asked a question on visa liberalization for countries in